I'm pleased to introduce Dr. Larry Rosen. You may notice he's 6 feet tall and has a full head of hair. Yeah, no, this is just the disguise. It's a wig now, so, okay, okay. So
I made her say that.
he didn't make her say that. Okay, Dr. Rosen is a professor of psychology and past chair here at CSUDH. He's a very popular professor on campus. He teaches classes that far exceed 400 students. And as a research psychologist, he has many specialties. Some of them are multitasking, social networking, and child and adolescent development. And he is also a world-renowned expert in the psychology of technology. That just rings off the tongue, right? Everyone say it together. The psychology of technology. Okay? And he is highly sought to speak all over the world on his groundbreaking, cutting-edge, and timely research. So you may have even seen him in one of his many media appearances, most recently on The Daily Show, talking about Google goggles.
Google Glass.
That doesn't ring as much bell off the tongue. He's been on Good Morning America, CNN, and a whole host of other shows. Or you may have read about him in notable periodicals like the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, Time Magazine, Newsweek, just to name a few. So he gets out there, yeah? Yeah. Okay, and the impact of his research is outstanding. So Dr. Rosen and his colleagues have examined the impact of technology on more than 30,000 people here in the US and in 22 countries. And to me, he's created a branding niche in technology research. He's written several books. A few of them are I Disorder, Understanding Our Obsession with Technology and Overcoming Its Hold on Us, Me, My Space, and I, Parenting in the Next Generation, and Rewired, Understanding the I Generation and the Way We Learn. And so that's just to name a few of his books. One book he has coming up, his 7th book, is called The Distracted Mind. It'll be published early next year. And it's the first brain book to approach the topic from both a psychological perspective and a brain science perspective. And it looks at how all this technology that we take in may be harmful to our brains. And he's the proud papa of 4 children. I know, right? So he's fertile.
Not anymore.
So, Dr. Rosen has graciously given us his time to share the secrets to his success and his writing and publishing his work. So this is truly a special event on campus. I'm grateful to Dr. Rosen for being here today. There will be handouts at the end so you can just focus on what he's saying and without having to worry about writing it down, and we'll give you the handouts, and you have evaluations that you will give me. And how about we get started with our master class from Dr. Rosen?
Thank you. Okay, so first question is, has anybody here written a book before?
Yes.
Okay. How many people here want to write a book? Good. How many that want to write a book want to write a nonfiction book? And then how many fiction book writers? Okay, for the fiction book writers, I'll sort of asterisk when I'm talking about stuff that relates to you. Mostly I'm going to talk about nonfiction books. Why? Why do you want to write a book?
Because there isn't a good one out there.
Okay, so you're writing it to replace a missing hole in the literature. Okay, you're writing it for your area specifically. Okay. Anybody writing a book trying to get rich? Good, because if you told me you were trying to get rich, I would tell you to stop right this minute. You do not get rich writing books. At one point, I actually kept track on one of the books I wrote, and I think I figured out that at this point, with all of the major royalties rolling in, I think I made about 10 cents an hour for writing the book, and I think that might be an overestimate. You don't write books to make money. The major reason I think for writing a book is for self-pleasure. It's because it's an important topic. It's because you have a knowledge in that topic. It's because you think everybody would like to hear what you have to say. You're not going to make any money out of it, but maybe you'll become famous. So, talks about some myths and realities. If you're writing about something you know a lot about, it's easy to write a book. That's not true. Writing a book is not easy. If your book is good, then you send it to the book publishers. There'll be a major bidding war to publish it. Forget about it. First of all, the whole publishing world has changed, and there are no bidding wars anymore, hardly at all, unless you're up in that, like, Kim Kardashian, I know your name, then there might be a bidding war. But for most books, there is no bidding war. And I'll tell you later a little bit about how little you get paid actually for the book. You can and will make a lot of money from writing a book. The answer is no. The typical book makes nothing. Once you are done with the book, it's ready to be published. That is not true, and I'll tell you more about what you have to do. And you don't need any help. You're a college professor and you can do it yourself. I'm a firm believer in the fact that you need a lot of help. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is the help from people in your field and the help from professionals. And the most important thing, if you really want to write a book, the most important thing I want to tell you is you need an agent. And that doesn't matter what kind of book you're writing, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, science fiction, poetry, it doesn't matter. Because book contracts are like 80 pages thick. And if you have an agent, yes, you pay them money to write your book, but they go through the whole contract. They negotiate everything for you. My contracts are full of strikeouts that I would have never thought to strike out, but my agent did. And so really what you're getting with an agent is you're paying for an attorney, and it's pretty cheap. So here's, if you're going to publish, what I'm going to spend most of the time talking about, and feel free to interrupt me, and like my students, feel free to text during class if you'd like. It's perfectly acceptable to me. I don't really care. I will tell you that if you're texting, you're distracted, and your distracted mind will not be able to pay attention, and so you will miss it all, but then you get the handouts anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I look at publishing through traditional publisher, which is somebody who actually takes your book, takes your manuscript, puts it in paper, publishes it for you. A traditional publisher has a marketing department, a PR department, a copy editing department. They have a whole slew of people who attack your manuscript and make it what it takes to get to that level. The non-traditional publishers, often called self-publishing, give you almost none of that. So I'm going to start from the traditional route, because if you're like most people writing a book, your first step will be to try to go the traditional route and try to get one of the publishers to publish your book, because that's the way to make money. So I'm going to take you through what I think are 7 phases, actually 8 phases, but phase 0, you should hopefully already have a brilliant idea. So how do you know if your brilliant idea is unique? The first thing I do is check Amazon. Amazon, by the way, is very interesting these days. They require the publishers of books, the major publishers, to give them the title and expected publication date 6 to 9 months before the book is published. So if you go on Amazon right now and you look in your topic area, if you have a specific area you're writing a book, you said, if you look up that specific area, there may be a book that's going to be published in 6 months, you will know it at least. So you will know you're not unique. They often, even books to come, they will often put at least a summary of the new book coming. If there's a table of contents that they have, they will put that in. So that's always my first source to see if my book is unique. Obviously, you know the literature in your area, that's a place to go. But then I check everything, and particularly Google Books and Google Scholar, because almost all books are on both of those sites. And so you search them with any keywords that look like what you're studying. And then obviously ask your colleagues. Ask your colleagues what book they would like to see written. Ask your colleagues if there already is a book. I always, before I write a book, reach out to everybody I know pretty much and say, gee, I looked on Amazon and I looked through these and I didn't see anything. Do you know anybody who's writing a book in this area? Because they may know somebody else who's writing a book. And then I always ask, who's their publisher? And then don't go to that publisher. So I'm going to recommend some books for you. They're all cheap, inexpensive. I would recommend buying all of them. The first one is by Michael Larson called How to Write a Book Proposal. It is in its millionth edition. I will tell you privately that Mike Larson is an asshole, but he writes a really good book, and he really knows how to write a book proposal. He may not be a nice man, but he knows how to write a book proposal. He's also an agent, and as an agent, he's not a very nice person, but he knows how to write a book proposal, and if you follow what he says, you will write a bang-up book proposal. So your book proposal is the first thing you write, even before you get an agent. You need a title, and these days, the catchier the title, the better. Make up words for title. Eye disorder didn't exist. We made it up. Dr. Cheever in the back wrote the book with me, and Dr. Carrier. We made up the title. It seemed like a classy title, and people picked it up. Some people liked it, some people didn't. It's okay. But a catchy title, short title, people talk about 2 to 3 word max for your title. And then if you want to write anything else, colon, and then your subtitle, and it can be as long as you want. The book proposal, the first part is what's called the hook. And it is probably the only thing that most people ever read. And if I were you, I would spend probably 25 hours writing the hook and sharing it with people to edit. The hook is basically a paragraph to 2 paragraphs crammed full of what you want the person to read before they flip your paper and put it in the circular file. So it's what you're going to write, why your book is so darn important, and who the heck are you? And by the way, the who the heck are you is probably the most important part, because with the book business these days, they're much more interested in publishing people than they are in publishing books. They want to publish someone who has a built-in audience, and I'll tell you in a second how you tell them you have a built-in audience, but they only want somebody with a built-in audience, meaning you're respected in your field, you've got 25 colleagues who will use your book for a course textbook, you've been interviewed by a bunch of major people who will be glad to interview you for the book, you speak regularly at conferences that you will be able to sell the book. That's what they want to know from you. Who are you? Why should I publish your book? And really, the why is because you're going to sell your book, because we're not. That's another sort of myth, that publishers will work really hard to sell your book. Sad to say, they used to. They used to work really hard. My first book, actually my second book, my second book, they actually hired a PR firm to go out. They really spent money and hired a PR firm and went out and got us interviews and all sorts of things. Now you're lucky if they have a one-person PR department or marketing department. The one thing they will do is they will help you in any way possible. And the one nice thing that most people don't know about is if you have a book and a reporter calls you and says, or usually emails you now and says, I would like to interview you about your book, the first thing you say is, would you like my publisher to send you a free copy? At which point all publishers will do that. They will send you out a free copy. You create an arrangement with your PR department, your marketing department, whoever it is. You say, please send it to so-and-so, and they rush it out. In fact, I've even had them messenger it across town if it's really, like if I had a New York Times interview and my publisher's in New York, and they messengered it across town because it was for the New York Times. So that's one way they will work with you. Your author bio comes next. Why should you be the one to write the book? Why are you the right person? Why not somebody else? And more, again, telling them one more time, what will you do to sell your book? They don't sell the book for you anymore. What will you do specifically to sell your book? Which is why, by the way, you don't write books for money, because as faculty, we're not very good salespeople. If we were, we'd have totally different jobs, and we'd be selling something. We're not good salespeople, and yet we have to become salespeople. That's really, if you really want your book to sell more than a few copies, that's what you have to do. Every book proposal needs a table of contents. And again, I think snappy titles make for better tables of contents. When you go on Amazon and you look up a book and it says, look inside this book, what's the first thing you look at? Table of contents. It's what everybody looks at. So if the table of contents has snappy titles, that's going to make you want to read more. That's going to make you want to look into the book. And if they have pages, you're going to want to read into the book and see a little bit about it. That's what you want your book to be doing too. So snappy titles for your chapter. And then you write, for every single chapter, you write a one-pager. And it's called a one-pager because it's supposed to be one page double-spaced. And the whole point is, here's what's in the chapter, here's what readers will learn. Period. It's very simple. You can give an example of the chapter. You can give a clever anecdote. Publishers seem to love clever anecdotes. You can give a clever anecdote and say how this relates to your chapter, what you're writing, and why this chapter is important, why this fits in. But you have to write one for every chapter, which means you have to have your book outlined before you propose it. Doesn't mean it stays that way. I've never had a book stay with exactly the same chapters that I proposed. It's always changed. The book I'm writing now, we proposed as 8 chapters. It's up to 12 at this point. And it's totally different than what we proposed. Then you have to have sample chapters. Unless you are an established author, and there were very few of you who have written books unless you are an established author, you have to show them that you can write. And depending upon who you send it to, what agent, and what that agent is going to send to what publishers, they will want 1, 2, or 3 chapters. If it's a fiction book, and this is for those few of you who are writing fiction books, they want the whole book. You don't get the luxury of just a couple samples. They want the whole book, because a fiction book is different. They want to see that you can develop the plot, develop the characters, take it all the way through to a logical conclusion. It may not end up that way. They may heavy edit the book. They may recommend you go back and change this, this, and this, but they want to see the whole work. With a nonfiction book, the books I've written, I've done anywhere between 1 and 3 chapters. Yes?
If you give them the whole book, the fiction book, would you have it copyrighted already? Would you have it registered copyrighted, and would they hate that if you did that?
First of all, interesting thing is you don't really have to copyright anything officially. In the old days, we used to send it to the I guess, Library of Congress and fill out a copyright form. You don't have to do that. As soon as you've written it and put the little C on it, it's copywritten. Anything you write is copywritten. In your contract for the book, it says who owns that copyright, which could be the publisher. But yes, you want to put at the bottom a little C with a circle around it and the year and your name to know that they know it's copywritten. But all you have to do to prove that you wrote it is to have a computer file with the date on it showing you wrote it. That's all. Yeah, it's interesting. They used to send everything to the Library of Congress. I haven't sent one in forever.
There's also the Creative Commons. The Creative Commons, you can also do a copyright there, and you can put their stamp on, and you can specify their use, how you want other people to be able to use it.
Right.
And it's the same thing as putting a C on the
Yeah.
copyright. It's called Creative Commons.
Yeah, and it's, are you asking because you're worried that somebody might steal the idea or steal the book? Yeah, I think with fiction books it is more of an issue. With nonfiction books it's less. With fiction books your book is out there and anybody can read it. And they're going to want to send it around. You're giving them, when you submit it, you're giving them permission to send it around for review. So that means people are going to read it, which means you have to be trusting enough in the publisher and your agent to control that process. It's really the agent that controls the process. The agent actually is the one that, in general, will send out the copies. Oh, sorry, back one. Competitive books. This is probably the most difficult but most important part of a proposal to write, because you have to go through and find every single book that you might think is a competitor to your book, and in one short paragraph say why it isn't, why your book is unique. And so you have to say past books, although they usually don't want you to go back too far because books have a very short shelf life. So 5 years back. So you put the name of the book, the publisher, the date, and this book is about such and such. My book is different because. Or this book only covers such and such. This book, whatever the title is, will cover the following in addition to that. And this is where you have to put in a lot of work. It's pretty amazing because unless your book is totally and utterly unique, most of mine have anywhere from 10 to 30 competitive books. Because you really want to convince a publisher, if they're going to spend money on you, that your book better be different. And so that's very important. And then the most important part is your marketing plan. Yes?
Question, you said, want to make sure I heard right, you said 10 to 20 is what you said?
I've done 10 to 20 competitive books. It's not how many, it's compulsiveness. You need to be OCD about it. You need to mention every single book.
And so the sincere question here is, why would the publisher then be convinced that your book is competitive in that context?
Because each book you've said, here's the Computers in the Second Self, was written by Sherry Turkle in 19 whatever. This book covers relationships between people online. My book is different because it covers that plus these following things in addition to it. By the way, if anybody wants, if you want to see a proposal, I'm happy to send you a book proposal. Just email me and I'll be happy to send you one. I'll send you an old one, but you get the gist of it, what it looks like. Because there is an art to writing that, and I've had it edited so many times by agents, edit, until I got it right. But it is important, that section. But the marketing plan is even more important. You have to list everywhere you can market that book and give them numbers. If you're a college professor, they want to know how many classes are you going to require to use your book every year. That's very important to them because they're going to want to see, and they're also going to ask potentially if you can give them names of colleagues who will also use the book in their schools. And if you have relationships with anybody in the media, you want to tell that. I've done interviews with the following magazines. Here's lists of people who have interviewed me. So it's really a comprehensive plan. And I've actually, in the past, consulted somebody from the marketing department to ask me, am I missing something? And so you want to do a lot of these pieces. What you want to do is go out and ask people for some help along the way. But if you know anybody in the marketing department or any marketers at all, they will be able to help you talk about how it's really thinking of tendrils going out there. You're thinking of all the possible crazy ways that you might sell your book. So if you go to conferences, are you willing to do book signings? Are you willing to do X, Y, and Z? And you basically want to sell your soul here. So then you start writing. See, the proposal usually comes first. You get all the proposal together, then you have to start writing. You have to have at least one chapter. If there's only one chapter, they mostly want chapter 1. Although that's not altogether true, because I think for one of my books I gave them chapter 7 because I thought it was going to be my strongest chapter. Nance, do you remember which one we gave them for eye disorder? I think the narcissism chapter. I think we gave them chapter 2 on that book, not chapter 1, because chapter 1 was boring compared to chapter 2. If they want one chapter, they're almost always going to want to see how you're going to set up the book. But more and more these days, they want more than one chapter. So I would start not with writing chapter 1. In fact, I write my books with chapter 1 second to last and chapter last. But pick the one that you're most passionate about. And when Nancy and Mark and I wrote Eye Disorder, I was just totally passionate about narcissism. Maybe it's personal, I don't know. Probably it's personal. But there was also so much research on it. There was a lot of research, so I was able to put in anecdotes and research results, and we had done research on it, and I was able to weave in a lot of things and show them that the chapters will all look like this, and they'll all have the same feel. It also was going to be, I think, the longest chapter in the book. So you want to be really passionate about what you're writing. You want to share your writing with as many people as possible. And you don't want to share it with people who are going to go, nice job, that's really good. You want to share it with people who are going to rip the heck out of it. You want to share it with people who are going to put on track changes on Microsoft Word and are going to mark up all sorts of things. I don't understand where you're going here. This doesn't make any sense. And you're going to want them to be really picky, and you're going to want some to be writers. They didn't even have to be writers in your area, just writers, people who know how to write. Because then they'll be able to tell you, no, this writing is too bulky, it's not suggesting the right way, it's not going the right way. And so you really, at this point, need reviewers. And bottom line, boy, if you don't check spelling and grammar and you send it to an agent, they will dump it in the trash can. That's all they will. So then finding an agent. I love this quote. If writers were good businessmen, they'd have too much sense to be writers. Think about it, it's very true. Your agent will take 15% of whatever you get. If you don't make anything, your agent doesn't make anything either. Your agent will negotiate the entire contract. What happens with your agent is you find an agent, and I'm going to give you share with you a book that you should buy that has the list of all agents that agent every single area, and it'll tell you whether what they agent and whether they're taking new clients, and they'll usually show what their latest books were so you can see if they publish similar books. An agent does everything. An agent is your marketer, your lawyer, your advocate. I've had an agent get on a phone call between me and an editor when I had problems with an editor, so they're sort of an arbiter in the middle. They earn their 15%, they really do, and I would highly recommend that you don't ever do a book without an agent. Yes, you lose money, but it's well worth it for all what they supply. They're also there to hold your hand. They're also there they'll read stuff. My agent reads stuff that I send her. She'll say this is crap, or she'll say this is really good, keep in this vein. If I have a problem with, on the Eye Disorder book, we had a little problem with the editor because we wanted to write a chapter on autism, right? And turns out that our editor sort of didn't want us to write a chapter on autism because she has somebody that's very close to her who's autistic, and it was about how technology impacts autistic people differently. And so we had a three-way conversation between, or maybe five-way. Were you and Mark on? I think you and Mark were on that conversation too. So we had five-way, the three of us authors, the agent, and the editor. And basically the agent was sort of like the, okay, your turn, you talk, you talk, you talk. And we ended up not having the chapter. We ended up exactly not putting in the chapter because she convinced us. But the agent was absolutely important. She was in the middle of the whole thing. And so you get what you pay for. Here are 2 books that you have to have. Chuck Sambuchino's book on Guide to Literary Agents, on Amazon, cheap, inexpensive, lists every single agent in there, says what they agent, what kind of books, the company, what they get. Some agents actually charge to read your proposal. I would not start with them. Some agents don't. Most agents don't charge to read your proposal. But this will tell you all the information. And then this book, Jeff Herman's Guide to Book Publishers, Editors, and Literary Agents, duplicates everything. So you've got much more information there. And it also talks about each publisher. Really, you work with your agent to figure out where to submit your work. Your agent most likely became an agent by first being a book editor or working for a book publisher. And then they decided to become a book agent instead. So that means they know the publishing world, they know the main publishing houses, they know the small boutique publishers, they have friends there, people they know there. Sorry Mario, I hit that just now. My current book is being published by Penguin, but only because my agent knew the editor at Penguin. And she sent the proposal to her because she knew her, and she said, Maria, I think you should take a look at this. I think you'll really like this book. I think it's right up your alley. And coming from an agent to a publisher, it gets listened to. Nobody gets a book published by sending it directly to the publisher. It goes into a big stack, and then about once a week they go like that and dump them into the trash. Editors do not read unsolicited manuscripts, period. They don't. So you go through an agent or your manuscript never gets read. It's the sorry state of affairs, but as all of my editors have said, if I were to read everything that comes across my desk, I would never leave the office. So then you have to write a query letter, and this is to an agent. Agents are very busy people. They agent a stable of writers, some of whom are in the middle of writing so they can ignore them, some of whom are getting started, some of whom are looking to publish other projects. They are busier than editors, and so you have to convince them in a query letter why they want to agent you. Probably the most important thing you'll do. 1 page only, and then you would attach your proposal. 1 page. I can guarantee you, though, as my agent has said, it better be good in the first paragraph, or she's not reading any more than the first paragraph. You should assume that agents are just like our students. When you send an email to your students with 5 paragraphs, they only read the first paragraph. Sorry to tell you, they only read the first paragraph. They ignore the rest. Agents are the same way. So you have to catch them in the very first paragraph. So the very first paragraph is the hook. This is different from the old hook. This is 1 sentence. It's designed to tell what the book is about, and why, all in 1 sentence. Sometimes an anecdote works. Sometimes a personal story works. Sometimes you want to stress the importance in some way that is germane to your topic area, but you need to hook the agent in your query letter. And if your first sentence isn't a grabber, not going to work. Mini synopsis, 1 paragraph. What is the book? And the best way to find out what that is read the front and back flaps of any book that's been published. And that'll tell you what you should write, because that's basically where they get the front and back flaps. And then 1 paragraph of who you are. And again, really they don't care who you are. They care what you can do to sell your book. Because you're only valuable to them if you sell books. If you don't sell books, they lose money. And then at the end, you usually thank them, and you attach a proposal. In the agent book that I showed before, it tells you whether each agent wants the proposal or just a query letter first. Some of them want a query letter only, and then they'll write you back. Some want the whole proposal. Some want a self-addressed stamped envelope so they can mail it right back to you. My first book, I papered the wall with 34 rejections that I got from agents. That's not even book publishers, from agents alone. 34. I had 34 rejections until I got an agent. So you keep trying. You keep trying, and you will win eventually. So agents get 15% of your royalties. That's standard. I've never heard of an agent getting any more or any less. They can charge a reading fee. I've seen reading fees quoted anywhere from $500 to $5,000 for different agents. I recommend that you start with agents that don't charge a reading fee, because I think that's, to me, a little on the unethical, shady side. But there are lots of them out there. The vast majority don't charge it. They may ask for revisions before they'll even consider agenting your book. They will have you sign an agency contract, which basically just says, I give you 15%, you do this for me, I do this. They package the whole thing. You send them the file, usually a Microsoft Word file. They package it nicely. If they're going to send it out, they usually put it in one of their folders from their agency. They make it look nice. They make sure it gets in the hands of the right publishers. They're the ones that get the offers, and they're the ones that negotiate, and they're the ones that review your contract. They do everything, and trust me, Stacy gets her 15% and deserves it. Then you celebrate your contract. You go, yay, I got a contract. And you have a long way to go. It will take you from first writing to end writing anywhere between 9 and 12 months to write a book. I'm going to give you some stats on how many hours it takes to write a book in a bit, but figure 9 to 12 months. That's usually what a publisher will give you, is turn in the book 9 to 12 months from the date of contract. Then it takes the publisher 6 to 9 months to get your book into publication. It is a perilously long time, which is why the self-publishing market has come in, because the self-publishing market takes 0 time to get it published. And I'll tell you a little bit about how you do that if that's the route you want to go. But the publisher takes your book, they read your book, your editor reads your book, makes comments of what she wants changed. You make changes, you send it back and forth, back and forth. When they accept the final copy, then the process begins. They hire their own copy editors, although sometimes they make you hire one to copy edit, and they read word by word, and they make lots of marks all over your paper in either Microsoft Word or often these days on some sort of Adobe product that they use. When you've made all the changes that they've asked and you've then sent it back, then there's a final proof process. So you get the final copy, it's on a PDF file, it looks very nice, it has page numbers and everything. And then at that point there's at least one more step. Somebody has to do the index. Most publishers will charge you to do the index. Am I remembering like $1,000 for iDisorder they wanted? They wanted $1,000 to do iDisorder. We made our students do it. Which is, by the way, a really good thing to do. We gave each of our students a chapter, and we gave them a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and said on the first column it's any words you come up that seem like they should be in an index. In the second column it's what page it's in. We just merged them all together, sorted them by words, and boom, we had an index. Cost us nothing, and it made our lab students read the book too. And the indexes, I think, came out better than the normal index, but the publisher will charge you to do the index. Once the index is done, and the book has been proofed, and you've done the whole thing, then it's still a couple months until it sees the light of day. It's a very long process. It really, truly is 6 to 9 months. My next book is due January 5th, and I believe the publication date's going to be somewhere in September. So that's a long process. So from the time you decide to write a book until the time it's published is usually about 2 years. That's a long time.
That timeline, is it the same for fiction and non-fiction?
I'm sorry, what?
That timeline, is it the same for fiction and non-fiction?
Yes, it is the same with fiction and nonfiction. It is not the same when you self-publish. But it is the same regardless of what you're publishing, because if you're publishing fiction, you won't have an index necessarily, so you won't have that problem, but that's minor. But you will have a copy editor who will read it, you will have an editor who will read it, then you'll have a copy editor who will read the final copy, you'll have to read every word and proof it, and it does take literally 6 to 9 months for that whole process. And then they have to figure out the marketing plan. They'll have marketing plan meetings, how they're going to market it, they're going to send their marketing materials to you, who do you know, what talk shows can you do, et cetera, et cetera. So contract issues, advance. Everybody wants an advance. An advance is money. And it's called an advance against royalties. So if they give you, say, $5,000 advance to write the book, that means that that is to cover your first $5,000 worth of royalties, which for most books would be about 2,500 copies of a book. Yeah. Meaning you get no money for the first 2,500 copies of the book because you've already gotten it. Now, you used to get the advance in 2 payments. You used to get half upon signing and half when they accepted your manuscript. That has totally changed. Now that's usually into 4 payments. Part upon signing, it's all negotiable, and that's what your agent does. Part upon signing, part upon submitting the final copy, part upon acceptance of the final copy, and part a year after it's published or when the paperback is published, whichever comes first. So my last advance for my book that I'm writing now, it's spread over about 2.5 years, which quite honestly for tax purposes is not a bad deal if it spreads money across 2 years. You will not get much of an advance. They don't give advances. They space them far out of time. And the good thing is if you get a $5,000 advance and your book sells 3 copies, you get to keep the $5,000. Unless it's in your contract that says you don't, at which point your agent should have X'd that out and removed it because your agent wants you to keep the money. The money is considered sort of to pay you to take the time to write the book so you don't have to go out and work at another job. That's the whole idea of an advance. Royalties are very complicated, which is again why you want your agent involved in all of this. It's usually 15% of the list price, sometimes 15% of the net price, but the list price and the net price are very different, and that depends on what vehicle they use to sell your book. If they sell it through Amazon, Amazon demands that they buy the books at 30% off the list price, and so you only get, on Amazon books, you get 15% of what Amazon sells for the book, minus what Amazon takes also as part of their profit. So bottom line, I think you get about $2 a book, is kind of the way I figured it, on a $15 book, which is about the average price book. You can consider that basically you get about $2 a book. And I figure how many hours you put into doing that.
Is that after the agent?
That's after the agent, yeah. Yeah, usually you get about 2.25 a book, and your agent takes 15% of that, so it brings it down to about $2 a book. Again, if you're trying to make money off of it, it's not worth it. For me, personally, the only reason that I write books, well, there's 2 reasons. One, because it gets me speaking engagements, which is where you make money, by the way. If your book is a topic that you might speak at a conference where they pay an honorarium for speaking, or they might, if it's a book about, like the book I wrote about parenting, I speak to a lot of parenting groups and they pay you an honorarium or a speaker's fee. Or you're doing it because you have a good ego involved and you really want to see your name on the cover of a book. If you want to see your name on the cover of the book, it doesn't matter what you make. It really doesn't matter what you make. Your name's still on the cover of the book. Your agent also deals with all of these things. These are all rights that you have to figure out how to deal with. There are paperback rights, there are ebook rights, there are audiobook rights, there are foreign rights. If your book is translated into another language, you will get money for it. You will get an advance, you will never see another penny. Nancy, do you remember what we got for maybe $200 each for the Japanese version and the Dutch version? And we have our book in 4 different languages or 5 different languages. I think total we've each gotten maybe $1,000. It's not a lot of money, and that's after the 15%. The agent gets 15% for that too. But the agent negotiates what you're going to get for the paperback. If it's in a hardback, the agent negotiates an ebook, what you get for the audiobook, and you do get little dribs and drabs of money, and they keep coming in $30 checks here and there. Writing the book. By now, by the way, at this point, you are sick and tired of this book. And you will be. You will be sick and tired. You go through these periods where you're just sick and tired of the book. You can't stand it anymore. How long will it take you to write? The average, I looked this up, the average nonfiction book takes 725 hours to write. So I did the calculation, and it's about 3 hours to write every page of a typical book. That doesn't count editing it, that counts writing it. So figure about 3 hours a page to write your book. You got to really want to write this book. You got to really want to write it to spend 725 hours doing something. This does not include any of the research you do. It's just the writing. And I'm going to tell you my process for doing research. I spend 2 weeks usually, 1 to 2 weeks, researching a topic, taking notes, and I'm going to show you exactly what I do on my computer so you can see what it looks like, and then 1 to 2 weeks to write a chapter. So here's what I call pre-writing. I keep a separate folder on my computer called the book, whatever book I'm writing, and then underneath it I have separate folders for each chapter. That of course starts with you have written the chapter names for each chapter in your proposal so you know what's in each chapter. Then I start collecting articles. I collect articles, journal articles, things people write, popular press articles, anything that's relevant. Some days I'll just sit on the computer and go, search for everything on narcissism, and I'll copy, and I won't read it, I'll just stick it into the folder, stick it in the folder, stick it in the folder, stick it in the folder, until I'm ready to write. I'm not ready to write yet because I'm ready to read. What I do is I read and I take copious notes in a Microsoft Word file. And I'll show you a picture of this, I copy and paste the article title from the file name. That's so I can find it again. Because the worst thing is when you copy something, a quote out of a book, and you can't remember what book it was in, what article it was in, what paper it was in. So I always start my outline with the title of whatever the file name is. When I read it, I put it in an outline format. But I don't use numbers, I just use indents. That's all. Because if you use numbers, a real outline format, when you try to translate it into what my next form, it doesn't work, it makes it a mess. So I use an outline format, I just indent, basically. Then when I've read an article, it doesn't matter whether it's a journal article, a popular press article, and it's in that folder, when I've read it, I rename the file and put the word done at the end in big capital letters. That reminds me that I've finished taking notes on that article. Don't look at it again until you need it again. So then it also helps me because in the morning if I'm reading, like if I'm spending my 1 to 2 weeks reading, I look down and I go, oh good, I've read a third of these articles because they have done next to it. You don't have to worry about resorting the folder or anything. And then when I'm finished with all of my notes, then it's run through my head for 2 weeks. And the interesting thing is, because this is a topic you love, you're only writing about stuff you love. Don't write about something you hate, it's not fun. When you're writing about something you love, it percolates in your mind. My ex-wife used to call it filtering. It just filters around in there. And you just let it filter. I call it being right-brained. You kind of be right-brained about it. You just let your brain kind of process it under the conscious level. By the time you've taken notes on, say, 30 articles or 50 articles for a chapter you're writing, the outline for that chapter will write itself in your head. And then what I do is I take each section that I took notes on, I copy it into the outline. So make the outline point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the 6 parts of my chapter. This fits in this chapter. This part fits in this section of the chapter. This part fits in this section. And from the original file, I double strike out everything that I've already moved. Wow. So what this says is I was writing, this is a narcissism chapter. I forgot. So this is notes. I read The Case for Using Research, Miller and Campbell. That's exactly copied. So if I need to go back and get any of this stuff, I know where it is. And all of this then gets double struck out, and I no longer use outline things because they're a mess. I just indent. But now I know I've done this, and in fact, if there's something that I don't know where to put, I highlight it in yellow, which says, save it for later. Maybe you'll need it, maybe it'll fit in another chapter, who knows? You can move it around, you can do whatever you want. And then here's what I do, I move it into an outline. So there was an outline part, trait versus pathological narcissism, and these are all things that I copied and pasted, and here's the Miller and Campbell stuff that I copied and pasted from the page before. Okay, so that's my practice, that's what I do. Everybody has a different way of writing them.
How do you cite all that?
How do you cite everything I've written? Mm-hmm. It depends on the publisher. Is your book going to be more technical in your field? Okay, then they will want either footnotes or endnotes, more likely endnotes. And so what you do, what I do, is every time I write something that has an endnote, I insert the endnote. Microsoft Word does that. You just insert footnote, change to endnote, change it to a number. It inserts it at the end. Then I go back to the exact article, and I go back to this source, and I put it in from there because I have the source. The nice thing I just learned.
Your reference sheet?
Yes. For each chapter, you have endnotes. The nice thing I learned is that if you find it on Google Scholar, there's this little button under Google Scholar called Cite. And if you click Cite, it cites it. It actually does the citations in APA format, There's 3 formats, I think. It does it for you. So you just then copy and paste it right in there, which saves you a lot of time. If you're citing, I cite a lot of popular press things or surveys that people do. You have to just go back and try to do the best. And I always make sure that my publisher and I, before we start, my editor and I, agree on the format that the endnotes are going to be. A lot of them want a certain format. I always insist on APA format because it's American Psychological Association, and I'm used to that, and it's easier to put it in that format. And then for footnotes, those are saved for wanting to say something about text that's sort of tangential, and that goes at the bottom of each page. And most publishers don't like footnotes. They really don't want them. They think if you have to footnote, most of the editors have told me this, if you have to footnote something, put it in the text. Figure out a way to make it in there. If it's important enough to be said, it's important enough to be part of the text. So, but again, you have to, this is an agreement you have before. It's not written, by the way. It's never been written that I have endnotes. I've just been told you will have endnotes. And after my 3rd book, which is my first really recent one, I didn't have endnotes, and the person said, well, where's all your endnotes? And I went, I didn't know I was supposed to have them. This was something you should have discussed way earlier. So I spent about a month going back through all of the articles and writing in all the endnotes. And it was a very painful lesson to learn. Now I do them as I'm going. Other people do them afterwards. I do them right as I'm going. Slows down my writing a little bit, but at least I know. Sometimes I'll put fillers, like I'll put in the endnote and down there I'll write Cheever article, and then I'll know which one to go to. And then I'll put them in later. But I like doing them as I go. For me, it's sort of the flow. So then when you're writing a chapter, use the outline to guide your writing. You've spent all this time collecting notes. The notes have generated in your head an outline. The outline's on paper. You just start writing. And the only way to start writing is to start writing. I recommend, and I don't know how you write, but I'm writing a book on distractions. So this is really important to me. Clear away distractions. If you're going to write, only have your one screen, your writing screen, turn off your Facebook, turn off your email, turn off your phone, get them out of the way. If you can't stand doing that, then do it in short bursts. If you need to check your phone often, then do it in 30-minute bursts. Don't check your phone for 30 minutes, put it aside, turn it off, go check it, whatever you need to do. But the distractions, when you're writing a book, when you're writing anything, but particularly when you're writing a book, you're trying to keep track of the big picture, which is sort of the whole theme of the book, the little picture, which is the chapter, and then the mini picture, which is the part of the chapter you're writing at that moment. And to try to keep track of all that while you're constantly checking email doesn't work, and I can tell you why some other time.
Do you choose a certain time of the day?
Everybody has their own special time when you're really alert. I'm terrible at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so I don't write. I take my dog to the park. I'm not a morning person, so I write from about 10 to 2.
10 to 2 in the morning until...
No, 10 to 2, yeah, 10 a.m. to, but that's my peak time. My coffee's kicked in, dog's been out, girlfriend's gone to work, I'm ready to write. But everybody has their own, I mean, I've heard people who only write on Saturday and Sunday. I've heard people who only write in the middle of the night. There are lots of people like that who write. I've heard of people write when the inspiration strikes them. I don't recommend that. I really recommend that you find a writing time. And I have a friend who has a writing place. What that is he's carved out a place that has no distractions. He takes everything away. He moves his laptop over there so he's not even distracted by the rest of his work. He sits in that one desk, his little desk in a little alcove that I think used to be a sewing closet, and he writes there. And it works for him. Distractions are the worst way to make writing difficult. And when you set a writing goal for each day, you won't make it. 2 pages, 1 page, 3 pages, 5 pages. I set lofty goals for myself and I don't make them. But when you finished on that outline, when you finished writing about trait narcissism, cross that out too, double strikeouts or single strikeouts with Word, whatever you want to do, so you know you don't have to go back to that again. You've already tackled that issue. If you have to go back to it again, you can, it's still there. This is just my writing style again. Don't worry about words. Don't start fighting over synonyms. Write it the way you talk. There's lots of time for rewriting later. Most of the good words come through rewriting, not through writing. What you really want to do is blurt out everything you can and get it on paper. It will be crap. The first time through it will be crap. I promise you. Then you have to edit it. Then you have to go back through it. Then you have to find better words. That's why the synonym part is on Microsoft Word. You'll find synonyms that seem to fit better. But don't stress the words. What you're really trying to do in the first pass through is to get everything that's in your outline onto paper in some sort of sentence order. That's the best I can offer. I power write, by the way.
When you do your re-editing,
You mean after you've written the first draft?
yeah, and you're looking for a word choice, is your target audience in mind?
Always. I write trade books for the public, so yes.
The general public?
Yes, general public.
Knowledgeable public?
Knowledgeable public, reasonably knowledgeable public. I mean, I think, I would say I try to shoot mine for 12th grade words, you know, sort of SAT words is where I shoot for. Again, it's your audience. If it's a technical audience, which sounds like if you're going to write a book, for, you know, in your field, it's probably for a technical group. My guess is then your language comes from whatever dictionary exists around the words in your field. I also write a lot of blogs, and I write them for parents, so I write that at a very much lower language level than books. You've always got time to change it. This first draft is never the last draft. And I try power writing. I don't know if this will work for you. It depends on how you like to write. Power writing is where you just sit down and you don't think and you just write. You just start writing. You just start writing. You write as many pages as you can. It doesn't have to be good. You throw it away later, but it gets the writing going. It gets the brain organizing it. Part of the writing and part of why my interest is in neuroscience right now is that our brain is pretty magical. And the reason I go through the steps of taking lots of notes, moving them into an outline, power writing, is because my brain is constantly trying to organize it in its head. We're all organizers. If you're on a college campus and you're a professor, you are an organizer. That's the way you teach, that's what you do. Unless you're scatterbrained completely, your brain works on organization. So all of these activities give it a chance to help you organize the flow of something. Being right brain takes it out of that. Being right brain says, I'm just going to start writing. I'm going to write. And I've gone through days where I've written 20 pages, literally 20 pages, and then thrown away 12 of them because they were crap. But then I was able the next day to write 5 more pages that substituted for those because my brain just kept going and going. And in the middle of the night, I woke up and, oh yeah, that's what I should have done. Okay, I got it. And the next morning, you start writing.
So how do you define power?
Power writing is just sitting there and writing. No notes, no nothing. You just simply write. You just start writing, period. I file everything with a date, and every day I resave the file with a new date. Mandatory. And 2 backups at a minimum. 2 backups at a minimum, a backup physically and a backup in the cloud. Mandatory. You do not want to lose a day of writing. And the reason I write a date on here is, I was actually working on chapter 2. The reason I write a date on here is because then if I lop something out 3 days before that and I want to put it back in, I know where it is. And you get to retrace the process. I'm obsessive about this. I don't know, you do this too, Nance, right? We date everything. And then you go, I mean, we actually had a folder, we share a Dropbox folder when we write together. If you write with somebody, that's a great way to do it. You get a Dropbox folder. We share a Dropbox folder, and one said, we were writing a handbook where we had 35 different chapters with different authors all doing them, and it was crazy. But we had spreadsheets, and we had a spreadsheet with the name of the authors, the title, their email addresses, the whole thing, when the book came, when their chapter came in, when it was edited, et cetera. We must have had 100 of those for 100 days with different dates on them. At the end, we needed to go back earlier to some spreadsheets. They were there. And so you just save everything. And I highly recommend that you have a cloud backup. I'm a Carbonite user. I happen to like Carbonite. It's cheap, works. It's $53 a year, $59 a year, something like that. Backs up everything on your computer as you're going, backs it up in the background. The other nice thing is if I'm here on campus, I type carbonite.com, and then I type my login, and I see an exact replica of what's on my computer at home. So if I want to start working, for some reason I have an hour and I want to start writing, I just download the chapter that I was working on before and then upload it back again. So that's why I love Carbonite. So this is my narcissism chapters. And notice some of them, I saved, like this day, I saved 2 drafts because I wrote for a while and then I stopped and I wrote again. And I wanted to capture both as separate. So, and some days I save multiple drafts and I save them with different names, different titles, everything. Chapter editing. I always believe, what kind of time do I have? 10 minutes. I always believe that you should let things sit and percolate. I'm a believer in percolating. The same way your brain, you right brain things, your brain works without you thinking about it consciously. We know this. We know enough that if you write something, it's still in your brain. It's not gone. And if you let it percolate, guaranteed, when you start rereading something that you wrote, you will find that you will notice immediately what needs to be changed or what is really good. You're able to make that assessment. Before you even start to edit, spell check. Nothing slows you down more than having to check spelling while you're editing. You want a clean document with all the spelling mistakes, typos, grammar. I recommend you reread, if you've written a chapter and then you're going to get ready to edit it, you read it through one time without touching anything. For Mark, he prints the chapter out. So he isn't tempted to make changes on the screen. He prints it out and reads it. Maybe make some notations on the side of where he might want to change things. But I recommend you just read it straight through. Just, again, it's sort of getting the gestalt, getting the whole picture of the chapter. Does it fit without going into the mini details of it? And then you start checking the outline against your chapter. Did you miss anything? Is everything in there? And now figure about 1 to 5 minutes to edit each page. So now you're spending, now your 10 cents an hour is probably 5 cents an hour, really. Book security and safety, I already said this. Don't worry somebody's going to steal your book idea. I often save my work. I do Control S about every 5 to 10 minutes. Control S, Control S, Control S, keep saving. At least backups, I already talked about this. Dropbox is external, Carbonite's external. You can have an external hard drive. The process of publishing is different. Some want to see your work chapter by chapter. Some want, as you're writing, some say, send me your first chapter when you got it in a good form. Some want to see the first 3 chapters and then say, okay, I'll wait until the rest of the book. It depends on your editor and how hands-on they are. My new editor has not yet wanted to see a chapter from the book at all, and it's due January 5th. I hope she's not shocked. Expect that editors will edit. This is what they do. Don't be disheartened when they put lots of comments on your chapter and ask you to move things around and change things and do things differently than you thought. Yes, it is your book. They are expected to add their touch, and don't argue with them. You may have academic freedom, but you don't have book freedom. You don't. It's their book. They're paying for it, so just expect it. And learn to say yes or pick your battles. I mean, that's the big thing, is pick your battles. If you don't like something, tell them why. And then figure that you're going to have to spend another 50 hours getting it into an acceptable form after you're taking all their edits in. So I think I've done all this up to here, page proofs. Permissions, anytime you have a figure in there from somebody else, a picture from somebody else, you have to get a permission. Start early. If you know you're going to have a figure and it's from somebody else's work, like out of a journal article, you need to get the permission form, you need to get permission. We had to take several things out of the iDisorder book at the end because we couldn't get the permissions at the end, so you need to know that. Cover art, you will have, depending upon the publisher, you will have consultative rights on the cover. What that means is they make the cover. It is not your choice. You can argue with them all you want. They pick the cover. Book flap, you get to write that stuff. Front and back, your little short bio that goes on there, you get to write that stuff if you want. Acknowledgements, marketing materials, you get to work with all that stuff. And they're going to want to talk to you about who you're going to get to endorse the book. Can you get book reviews? Can you get somebody to write a blog post about your book? Can you get somebody to tweet about your book? Can you give out free copies? They will be happy to give out free copies to anybody who will write about your book. So bloggers, reporters of any sort, they will give free copies. You can give pre-interviews before the book comes out. And then they have some ideas about the issues they have to deal with, like what size book, whether they're going to allow any color, which they don't. how big is the first printing, whether they have an ebook coming out. First printings are going to be small. Your marketing starts when you start the book. That's the bottom line. You should be keeping a folder called marketing. All my contacts. I have a huge email list of every single journalist who has ever interviewed me. And it's probably got 500 names in it and email addresses. I will send that off to the PR department for the book, and they will email them all and ask them if they want a free copy. Put it in your email signature file. My email signature file always has the name of my book. Publicity. Start a blog. Write your own blog. Blogger.com is free. You can write a blog anywhere. If you have, like I write for Psychology Today, so if you have a magazine like that in your field and they have a blog, ask them if you can write for them. And write a lot and mention your book in every blog post you write. Tweet about similar issues so people out there get to know you. If you're writing a book about distraction, then tweet about other things that come up about distraction. Media. Should you hire a PR specialist? I don't know. Some people say yes, some people say no. I hired one once. She got me in USA Today. That sold a lot of books. So I guess that was worth it. It cost me $2,500, which is pretty standard for a very low effort PR specialist. If it's topical, and I encourage you, if you're going to write a book that's all topical, not in small field, but more general for the public, that you really want to be interviewed. And so whenever you see an interview, and whenever you see an article that you read online in any kind of magazine, online newspaper, and there's a comment section, write a comment. You want your name out there, and you want to slip in, I'm writing a book on this topic at the same time. So you want to basically, you start when you're writing, and you keep marketing from the beginning. Otherwise, your book isn't going to sell. Turn down no interview. Respond to any email and phone request within 5 minutes from a journalist. Journalists have a Rolodex, and they email you and 5,000 other people at the same time. First one in the back gets the interview. I have a standing rule, no more than 5 minutes. Selling you in the book, marketing. I said that they'll send out books for you, create the list, mention the book to anybody who will listen, give free talks. Oh, free talks are very good. Give free talks to any group that you think will sell your book. Offer to give away books to them. The authors get, I don't know what we get, how many, we get about 25 free copies from iDisorder. We got 25 free copies. They were happy to give us extra copies if we were going to go give a talk. I would just say, send me 2 copies so I can give them away. And you raffle them off at conferences. It also creates a buzz for your book. Book publishing realities, I have no time left, right?
2 minutes.
All right. There are only 5 publishers left. That's it. There are only 5. That's it, the big 5. That's it. That's all there are. They've all merged into one mess. There are lots of other publishers. The typical nonfiction book sells less than 250 copies a year and less than 3,000 in its lifetime. The average print run, your first print run, is going to be about 5,000 books if you're lucky. If you're lucky, they will print 5,000. The average book does not get an advance. If you do get an advance, the average book never earns out an advance, meaning you don't get enough royalties, but you get to keep the money anyway. They lose. So just real quickly, and this will be all in the notes, and this I tried to, because I knew I wouldn't get this far. Anybody want to self-publish? Okay, if you want to self-publish, there are really only 2 modalities, print on demand and self-publishing. Basically, the difference is simple. Print on demand is stuff like Amazon. You send them the complete thing that you're done with. They print, when somebody orders the book, they print it. Self-publishing means you pay to produce 1,000 books, and then you distribute them, or they're distributed usually through a company called Ingram, which takes 40% of your book. The pros, much faster. Once the book is done, once you think the book is done, boom, it's there. If you want to revise the book, boom, you revise it if it's on a download on demand, and you get full control. You do the cover, you do the index, you do the whole thing, but you pay for it. But you can also make more money, but if you go the route of printing a whole bunch, you can lose a lot of money. There are basically, I actually spent a lot of time on this, so I left all this for you. There are basically only a few vendors that are considered fairly reliable. Amazon's the biggest one right now. If you go on to createspace.com, Amazon owns it. They have a very good document there about exactly what they do for what cost. You make about $2 a book, but it appears on Amazon, which everybody looks at Amazon. There are others, they charge an upfront fee also, just like Amazon does. It ranges around $1,000 and up. These are the 3 big ones. And you can pay more or less depending upon the services you get. They will edit it for you for a fee. They will make it into an ebook for a different fee. They will do cover art. They will do all sorts of design help. But they have these charts that say, if you want this, it'll cost you X more, X more, X more. Bottom line, here's the last thing I'm going to make you get by. If you buy no other book, this is the one you buy. It's called Writer's Market. It's done every year. It really covers everything. And then go to writersdigest.com. It is the only website that's worth reading. It has so much junk on it about all of the stuff I talked about and way more. And they also have access to other writers on there. You can ask questions. There's lots of stuff there. So I think I'm done. And it says I have a lab meeting now.
Oh, thank you.
See that? My office reminders, which somehow are quadrupled. I have 2 lab meetings at the same time.
Can you take a couple of questions?
Sure, happy to.
Anybody have any burning questions?
You can always ask me, by the way.
Back one so I can get the last.
You have the handouts on your way out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here.
Well, that's okay, it's gonna be,
So,
that's it, yes.
Go ahead, ask
yeah,
questions.
quick question. I've been under the impression that I gotta go to an academic conference and I've gotta meet with a representative from the publishing company, boom, boom, boom.
Nope, don't do it that way.
Okay,
Agent,
agent.
agent, agent, agent. I tried, okay, I've sold 7 books now. The first one I tried to do on my own, failed miserably. I self-published it. I went to every conference I could. I wore buttons. Ask me about my book. I wore buttons. I went around to all the publishers, didn't do a thing. Got an agent, she sold it in about a week. And got me an advance on it.
So, you know, if I'm not gonna get rich on this anyway,
Nope.
might as well just hire an agent. That's what I'm thinking.
Again, if you're in it purely mercenarily to make a lot of money, you can make a lot of money if you self-publish it and you get the right publicity and you get all the money comes to you. Problem is you then have to start reading contracts and knowing how to negotiate and knowing what works and what doesn't work, and it's not worth it. You need a lawyer. You need a good, and what you need is an agent who agents books that are in your field, that are similar, because that agent then will know publishers who will publish those books. Yes?
You have had probably experience in publishing in scientific journals. For people, what is I know that the process is very different.
For publishing journal articles?
Yeah, I know that the process is different, but
Mhm.
for somebody who has been in the business of just publishing in scientific journal, and you already have gone through this process, what is your recommendation? Should it come easier? Is it a completely different experience?
It's totally different writing.
Yeah.
Scientific writing, journal writing, and book writing are totally different. Unless you happen to be writing a very scientific book like a textbook, they're totally different. And even textbooks are very different because you're writing it to engage the students in a different way. I only write trade books. I only write books for the general public. And those have to be written totally differently. They do talk about research a lot, but whereas I would have like Dr. Cheever published a really interesting article that I wrote about yesterday, and her article is like 12 pages long, and I wrote about it in 1 paragraph. So you have to distill it down to what the public can read and how they can understand it. It's very different. It's like, in fact, it makes me crazy to be writing journal articles at the same time I'm writing books, because it's a totally different mindset.
Okay.
Your journal article is very technical, literature review, research, whatever it is you did. Your book is more almost your opinion with backup facts. It's much more fun to write for me to write books, but
Okay, that's what I
If you use photos, did you mention something about color? You can use color photos.
you can use color photos if you're going to self-publish. Most real publishers, unless you have a book like Jerry Moore's new book has a lot of color pictures in it, but his is based on you know, the need for lots of color pictures, and he negotiated that with his publisher. If you want to show it, and it's a chemistry book, what you have to do is do the literature search, go back and look at what other chemistry books there are, see what publishers publish them, see if they add color pictures in it. Color's hard these days because they don't really want to spend the money. Sometimes they will say you can have they'll allow you up to 10 color pictures or up to 15. It's negotiating, and again, if you get an agent and you want your agent to negotiate that for you, that's a negotiating point. Thanks. Happy to. And you guys can always ask me questions. I'm always around.
She loves to ask his family, so let's give them another hand.
Thank you.